Right. Good evening, everybody. I think it's only fair for us not to keep people waiting. The people who have joined us on time, I think it's only fair that we continue, we kick off and let's get cracking. Welcome to the Tech Leaders Network webinar on positioning your business, your tech business for funding. And we have experts in the house today who are going to be chatting with us. It's a very relaxed session. I would like for anybody who wants to ask questions at any time to raise up their hands and feel free to ask. We want it to be a very short session because we know that we appreciate that it's a Friday. People want to go off, I don't know, to wherever they hang out at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock to go off for drinks. And yeah, we're happy to have everybody here. I'll do a short introduction, but I would really prefer them to introduce themselves. I will just be the moderator for this session. And it's going to be Dami and Ayoola with us. Just a quick one before we start. Ayoola, will the co-founder of Umbrella be joining us?
Yeah, he's in. His name is Sean on the call, but his name is John ADebayo, so he'll be on the call. He will speak when it's time. He will speak.
Okay, John ADebayo, nice to have you here. You're welcome. Right? Can we have you? Yay!
Hi, nice to be here. It's so good to see everyone.
It's good to see you. It's good to have you here. Right. Let's get cracking. So first off, we're going to ask Dami to introduce herself. Dami is an investment professional with Diligence Africa, whereby Ayoola and John are the professionals in media, investment, advertising, small businesses with Umbrella. But I'll let them do the introduction because I want Dami to really explain to us what she does, what her organization does, and then we continue from there. Over to you, Dami.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm guessing it's, well, afternoon, it's still afternoon. My name is Dami Thompson. I founded Diligence Africa because I felt like there was a gap in the startup ecosystem, you know, around accountability, governance, and ethics within startups. And I thought that, you know, building a company that helps investors get more accountability or be more get more transparency from founders, from, you know, their portfolio companies, but even help on the, you know, on the flip side, also help founders become more process driven with their companies. I think that one of the things that many founders miss is that when you avoid to build certain processes in your business, there are so many things that you miss. There's so much revenue that you would lose out because sometimes it's not even, you know, like, it's not even the high level, it's not even like the management team kind of doing the wrong things. It's, you know, some members of the team. I worked at EcoVC for over 5 years, and EcoVC is one of the early venture capital firms, you know, in Africa. Started out as in-house counsel at EcoVC and then grew to an investor. I led 7 deals at EcoVC. I've also been an angel investor in over 25 startups. So I also have an angel investment syndicate called Yellowwood Capital, where we make investments into startups globally. But, you know, fast forward to my time, you know, at EcoVC, I worked with a Series A company that raised $5 million. And my role there was to help them expand across emerging markets. And I think that it was in the course of working with that company that I discovered some of the governance problems that, you know, that founders face. And that was why, you know, I decided that Diligence Africa was something that was necessary. So on one side, Diligence Africa provides due diligence services. That the name kind of speaks for itself. Due diligence services to investors looking to put money to deals. So we do provide data beyond what you see in the data room. On the other side, we also provide startup advisory services where we provide fractional CFO services and governance and compliance services where we're reviewing your process every quarter to really understand, to help you identify the gaps in your businesses, identify the lapses, we help you fix it, and then we do that on a quarterly basis just so that we can maintain a proper more laid out process. And also, honestly, I think for founders makes your company very attractive to investors, because if investors already know that you have that kind of process, then they know they will take you more seriously as a founder.
Okay, Fantastic. Thanks, Dami. We're going to come back to more about your process shortly. But I want us to hear from the umbrella guys, John and Ayoola. We want to know what your business does and what you can offer to our team, our viewers today.
Right. Thanks, Buki. Hi, guys. My name is Ayoola Ogunyomi. I'm co-founder at Umbrella. Umbrella basically is Africa's marketplace for startup investment and exit. Basically, what we do is that we connect pre-seed and seed African founders to investors. On our platform, you have advisors who help in the investment readiness stage for founders. As well as what we do is that we also take part in the due diligence process, right? So we do the due diligence and KYC, right? Compliance and KYCs for founders as well as investors on our platform. We're in 6 countries: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Rwanda, Uganda. And we currently have over 1,000 startups in our database that we're working with. We're looking to close up some deals in a week or 2, to be precise. I'll just speak to my background, just like Dami has done. She's done the lead, so I'll just take over the lead from Dami. My background, I have over 12 years experience in marketing comms, where I've currently just ended my role as head of marketing at Patricia, also pushing Umbrella on the side for a while. We've also done, myself and John have been scouts for a couple of VCs, scouting for startups, right, within the ecosystem. So yeah, I started my background at Saatchi & Saatchi. I moved on from Saatchi to Deal Day, where I was a marketing analyst at Deal Day. Moved on from Deal Day to Podozi, where I was head of digital. At Podozi, I moved to CMA Group, owners of Sound City, Spice TV, On TV, and the rest of them. That's media, where I was head of digital as well. And then I worked at RFDP, that's Pulse, owners of Pulse, as a senior accountant, account manager, working on just international brands. And then I'd moved to OPE, where I was a growth marketer and head of strategy across the business. And then, yeah, tried to start up my own startup called Apate, which is an hospitality business. Tried to raise funding. We realized that raising funds in Africa, you have to belong to some form of cabal. And so we decided to break that cabal. Hence the reason why we wanted to have a marketplace where investors can freely, see startups, see founders, and make their decisions based on what they see, as opposed to, the cabals that lead the investment landscape, right? So we wanted to decentralize the space. By this, we have our background in crypto, right? So it was only just fair to also come and disrupt the investment landscape. And that's what we're trying to do with Umbrella, disrupt the investment landscape so that we have more players invest in viable startup and viable founders. So I'll just rest my case there. Just let John take over.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's so good
Thank
to be
you,
here.
Ayoola.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is John ADebayo. It's so good to be here. I'll just continue from where Ayoola stopped. As Umbrella, basically, we're very passionate about raising funds for startups. And then this was born out of the fact that we have tried different businesses together, and we saw how difficult it was for us to acquire funds to build the future that we envisage. And then we decided that, okay, we're going to start a company where we'll put startups through an investment readiness program, because what we discovered was that many startups don't even know how to raise funds. Many startups are uneducated on how to approach an investor. So what we do at Umbrella is, even though we have a marketplace that links up startups to investors, where they can seek funding or vice versa, where an investor can come and fund a company, we try to take these startups through what we call an investment readiness program, where we're going to make sure that that data room is up to date. We probe their operations, their marketing, their tech, strategic partnerships, use of funds, and so on and so forth, so that we can be sure that when a startup meets an investor, they can put their best feet forward. And then we have built a structure that enables this to work. We have a team of advisories and a community of investors. Our advisory team is up to a 40 count right now. And then our community of investors are up to 400. As he said, as AY earlier mentioned, we have a community of startups that are 1,000 and counting. And then we're looking to provide value to this community. Just to speak to my background, I have over 8 years in operations and process management across the e-commerce section, e-commerce sector, the crypto sector, and fintech sector. Basically, my passions are to make sure that processes are seamless and very simple. I need to break them down into the most simple form so that it is easy for any team or company really to just execute. So basically, these are my passions, and then this is what we're doing as Umbrella. Because of time, I'll just stop here so that we can proceed to the crux of the matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I'm going to come back to some of the things that you touched on, especially that investor readiness part. And then the part where Ayoola said the cabal, I really want to touch on that. But by the way, everybody, Dami's only with us up until 5 o'clock on the dot. She has to run to another meeting, so I'll be directing the earlier set of the questions. Sorry, she's only with us until 6 o'clock. And I realized that I didn't introduce myself. I just basically assumed that everybody knows who I am. My name is Buki Osunkeye, the co-convener of Tech Leaders Network. And the reason that we set up Tech Leaders Network is because we also realized, like you guys, that there's a gap in the market. We find that a lot of the earlier stage founders back in 2012, 13, 14, the people who initially got into this industry were privileged to have, been part of the CC Hub and Della, the initial, group of people who were getting into tech. And some of those companies have gone on now to become unicorn. But there's a gap in the market in the sense that there's a lot of people who are just building, people like me, who I've bootstrapped my tech companies myself, and we don't have somewhere for camaraderie, somewhere to share knowledge, somewhere to exchange ideas. And, people are coming into the field, into the industry from different angles. And I decided that, we need a space where we can all come together at different points to learn, be it in webinars, be it in meetups, be it in, just troubleshooting some of the problems that we have in business, especially doing business in this part of the world. We understand the challenges. So that's really it in a nutshell. This is just a space where, you can come join and be part of, a hub where we're building together, failing forward together, and troubleshooting together. I won't say, I won't spend too much time on that. I want to direct a question at Dami, right? We have a short time, and let's just put it this way. If as a founder, am I frozen? Can everybody still hear me and see me? Yes,
yes,
okay.
We can. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So if as a founder, somebody who started business, I'm going to compare two sets of people, right? Supposing somebody started business in 2023, and it's just, starting to grow, their product is ready, they're out in the marketplace, right? That's person A. And then supposing another person started business, let's say 2019, they've bootstrapped, they've, struggled and strived up until now, and they realize that, we can't do this alone anymore, right? And they meet you. Today they see Dami Thompson, Diligence Africa. So person A, who's just starting 2023, has only garnered a few months, building their team, and person B, who has been struggling for a while and bootstrapped up until this point, and they approach you, what would you advise is the very next steps that each of them would take?
I think that a lot of my question, so it's a little, the question is not as straightforward or straight lined, but I think my question to them would be about traction, because it's possible for you to have been in business for 6 years and you still don't have significant traction. Unfortunately, the longer you're in business, and the longer that you are not able to show traction, just shows that there might be something either wrong with the business model, or maybe the market opportunity is not as large enough, or maybe the founder is just not the right person to be building that business, or maybe it's not just also a venture backable business, right? So there are different dynamics. I think that for someone who's bootstrapped launched in 2023, it's easier for investors to relate and say, you know what, oh, you know, you just started your business. Let's either give it more time, or we can give you $50,000 now and let's see how you grow. And then if you do well, then we'll participate in the larger fund. So I think that a lot of the question will be directed towards like, what is your traction? Because if you're not able to show any significant traction, not many people will be speaking to you. Fortunately, unfortunately for certain people, some people have track record of being, you know, like having raised or having worked in a company, being a management part of the management team that raised significant amount of money. So take, for example, you mentioned Andela, all the guys that came out from Andela, Nadaya, Inyi, and one of the other guys, all of them have track record, you know, for building a business that has been successful. So a lot of them have gone on to raise more money, have started new companies, and have been successful in those companies. So those are the kind of things where sometimes it might not just be traction. Some people will just say, you know what, you've done this and you've done it very well, and we believe your ability to execute in a new company, and they just give you money based on that.
The reason can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So the reason I asked that question in particular was because I really wanted you to talk about traction, right? You'll be surprised, let's be honest, that some people don't know the full meaning of traction, like what encompasses that as traction in my business.
Yeah.
Give us a broad overview of everything that you need to be paying attention to from the very beginning to comprise traction presentation.
Yes, you know that I did not realize that. So I had a call this morning. So I was on Dr. Ola, Flying Doctors launched a book, and someone from the webinar that we did reached out to me and said, you know, he has a business, he wants to raise venture debt. And because that's also one of the things that we do, where we work with companies. In some way, it's a part of it is investment readiness, but a part of it is we want to make sure that when we present you in front of an investor, or we present you in front of a venture debt holder, or who can give you venture debt, we've done all the diligence that we can do, because we're betting on our reputation to present you in front of this person. And so he said, you know, he wants to raise a venture debt. So I told people that if you're looking to raise venture debt, reach out to me, and then we'll assess your business and we'll determine if there's something that was good for you. But he came and so on the call earlier today, he said, we're pre-revenue. I said, okay, but have you done anything? Do you have a pilot? Is there any traction? And the next question was, what is traction? And honestly, for the life of me, I never would have expected that some people don't know the meaning. And, you know, it's I'm glad that you're also bringing it up. So to cut the long story short, traction is, do you have anyone who's using your product, who is paying for your product, and who will consistently pay for it? So on one part, it is people who like your product. Some people will use your product because, you know, it's good for where they are. It might not be an everyday product for them. Some products might be everyday for certain users. But also your traction has a lot to do with how many people are using your product. If you say that your market opportunity is 5 million users and you only have 50 people using your product, and you've been in business for example, using the example that you said, since 2019, many investors will find it very difficult to relate with everything that you said, because according to them, if you're telling them in your pitch deck that the market opportunity is 5 million users and you only have 50, then there's a lot of disparity between what is actually happening in the market with your product versus the reality. So there's a good balance between, you know, saying, oh, we have a certain number of users. So again, saying that you have traction is you have a great number of users on your product. Again, the number of users that you have on your you know, using your product depends on the stage that you are. So if you're seed stage, you're just about to raise angel funding, you know, you might have like 10. You might do a pilot just even to show that this is a business that actually works. Some people have done research. So this guy that I was speaking with, he says he's done the research, he's spoken to people, but he actually hasn't executed. And so my next question with him was that, how do you actually know that your business works? Because if you don't have anything to prove to someone, a pilot, borrow money, take $5,000 and tell and go out and execute the research, and go out and execute the research that you've done to actually show investors and even some of your users that this product actually works, you don't have anything. And so, you don't have anything. And so that's one of the things that, again, let me backtrack. Number of users that you have on your platform is traction. Number of recurring users is significant traction. Number of partnerships that you have is traction. Number of, and again, your partnerships. So some people will say, oh, I've had conversations with this person, and any investor that hears that will want to do, want to learn more. Like what are those conversations? How are they, how are those conversations going? What exactly are you saying? And what is the end goal for those conversations? But signaling that you have partnership with, huge organizations. So Jason, I'm sure this is something that, is public knowledge. Jason Injoku, is raising another fund. Sorry, another company. He's building another company. And he's launched the platform. He has, some revenue, and he has, a significant amount of users, but he has a huge number of community that would help fuel the growth of the business. But he also has partnerships, with like distribution. I'm trying not to mention names, but he also has partnership conversations with distribution. And in the email that he sent, he listed what those conversations are and where those conversations will end up and what the revenue that will come out of those conversations. So when you tell an investor that you're having conversations, it's not just, oh, we're speaking to whatever company, we're speaking to this company, we're speaking to this company. It is like, what is the content of this conversation and what is the possible revenue that you will generate from this conversation, so that when investors see that if you close that deal, there's a potential that this business will be big, right? Your revenue is also, your traction, in some sense could also be the amount of money that you've raised, because again, it's good signal that people recognize what you're doing and people are willing to give you money to execute. Your traction will also be, like your team, how many people do you have on your team? Who else is building this with you? People also want to see that you have the right support in your company, because as a solo founder, it's very difficult. Honestly, it's very difficult for a solo founder to build. You generally want to work with someone, because then both of you can carry the burden of building the business. So those would, be what I would say would be your traction. It's money in the bank. It's, customers paying. Sometimes even if you had people that you were serving, but they were not necessarily paying, but you had a plan for them to pay in the long term, it's also traction.
Okay, thank you very much, Dami. Thank you for that. Guys, umbrella. I think I want to look at it from not a context of your company, right? But Ayoola mentioned something earlier on that, or I think it was John that said that you guys used to scout for VCs before. So I want to take it from a point of view of what if any one of our members does not directly know a company like Umbrella or know Diligence Africa or any other company. Let me ask Ayoola or John, right? That if VCs are scouting, they're out there, right? So what are the sort of things we could be doing in the public eye or in the space? There's a common saying that all VCs belong to a WhatsApp group, because there's this way that information flies around between them. Like, you have a conversation with one VC tomorrow, 30 of them have already heard about it. You understand? So privately, without actively, deliberately seeking funding, right? A founder, what should you be doing yourself? Where should you be? How should you be positioning yourself out there? Irregardless of whether you know of Diligence Africa or Umbrella or a type of these companies.
All right, so I would say that for me, with my first startup, right, what we did was with my team was to, even though that might sound very ridiculous right now, we jumped on the flight to Rwanda to attend the tech summit, right? So what I'm saying is that, in other words, is that attend a lot of tech summits, be open-minded to speaking to people, be open-minded to gaining knowledge, sit in the hall. If you're a shy founder, you can't be a shy founder, right? You need to go out there and, sell your story. Nobody's going to tell the story of what you're building, right? You are the first point of call to whatever you're doing. So the first attempt would be that, there are a lot of platforms to seek these things, right? When you speak to one founder, he's going to tell you about a particular group, and that's how we joined certain groups. That's how we even joined investors networks as well, angel investors network. One person would lead you to the other person, one person would do a referral, and from there you could ask for coffee talks, talk about your business, talk about how you can integrate partnerships, seek out collaboration. That's the fastest way to grow, right? Or you are a fintech company, just give me your API, let me integrate your API into my platform. Why am I trying to build what you already have built, right? So that way you foster relationship, and then it's faster ways to go. The other part of it will be that there are accelerators and incubators programs that you can also try to apply for. We did that at the early stage as well. Join a couple of them, seek out, read. The problem I realized that a lot of founders don't read. We assume that, because we have certain information that the questions are asking for, or they've asked in the question box, you just feel it's based on your thought process, right? Sometimes it's good to find out from founders who have reached out to them on LinkedIn, find out how they raised. For instance, we're trying to raise with Y Combinator. Look for a founder who has raised with Y Combinator, or who is in the Y Combinator program. Let them put you through the process. If you can't afford to read all the documentation, right, that you see online, right, watch videos, go on YouTube. Y Combinator has a full stack of videos. There's a startup school as well that you could also just learn from, like listen to it, watch them, look at the details that are missing in your entire pitch deck or in your data room, right? Oftentimes we realize that the biggest problem is valuation, right? A lot of startups do not understand how to value their businesses, and I think that's where a company like Diligence comes into play, right? I'm sure that Dami and her team would know how to refer you to the best practitioners that would help you with valuation, right? Or the valuation exercise, right? But oftentimes just go on LinkedIn, connect to people, ask for meetings, jump on calls, ask them about their experience, tell them about your idea, tell them about what you're building, and you'll be surprised. It happened to us. We booked an advisory. There are people who are on LinkedIn who are called startup advisors. Look for them, set up a meeting with them. If you have to pay for those meetings, please pay for them, because we paid for some meetings. And I will tell you that shifts the entire atmosphere for us at Umbrella, right? Because what we were thinking was our market size was actually even bigger than the market size that we could have addressed. Sometimes it's that you are thinking that your business model is going to be subscription, and somebody has done that in the past, or has sat in calls where they realize that subscription is not even the best model for such business that you're trying to do. So I'm a fan of advice and mentorship. There's nothing wrong in sticking out. For instance, I could reach out to Dami and say, you know what, Dami, I want you to mentor us. There's nothing wrong in that. In fact, even if it's one meeting in 3 months that Dami is going to be able to take, the value of one meeting versus 0 meeting would be obvious, right? So I'll just let John also add to it.
All right. I think most of what I've said has already been said, but I'll just like to add a few things. I'd like to go back to what I call the basics, because most founders, they spend their time doing a lot of things that are not really critical to building their business in the name of chasing traction. I mean, like, it is okay to go out there and do all manner of things that will showcase your business out there, but then as a founder, your primary aim is to focus on building the dream that you believe in, or the future that you believe in. So therefore, it is first important to realize that you can't do it alone. In fact, if you walk up to an investor and then you say, oh, I'm looking for XYZ amount of money, and they see that you're the only one on your team, they're not interested, because they just feel that, oh, we're giving this money to a one man, and then it would just be better if you have a team that will help you build this faster. Nobody's trying to invest in just one person, except like you're a talent, right? Like maybe a footballer or so on and so forth, right? Secondly, it is very critical, as AY said, you should seek out mentorship. Most founders think that, oh, because I caught an idea in the dead of the night and it didn't let me sleep anymore, I I can do this all by myself. They feel, oh, I can do this alone, I know it all, and so on and so forth. But mentorship is very critical. Why? Because there are a lot of people who are subject matter experts in different sectors that you're trying to get into that can guide you so that you can avoid some pitfalls that people generally fall into. So a meeting a day with a mentor, and then it is true that sometimes a mentor might not have time to mentor you, especially if it's for free, day in, day out, except they have passion for the business that you're trying to build or they see potential in what you're trying to do. But then what you can do as AY suggested is to form a routine as a founder. Get different mentors from an easily accessible platform like LinkedIn or a mentorship platform. There are a few of them that are out there. And then book a meeting a day with different mentors. So you as a founder, you know, oh, every day by 9 o'clock, I'm supposed to have a meeting with a mentor, telling him about my business and seeking his advice. It spreads it out for the mentorship you're going to get. So that way you're not burdening one mentor to mentor you all the time, all through. However, you have a group of people that are interested in your business. And then with the more people, I mean, like they say a lot of cooks spoil the soup, but in this case, you're trying to cast your net as wide as possible so that you can get as much information that will help you build your business as possible. And then you can now decide, oh, which is relevant to my business and which is not. The next up, I think founders, apart from, I mean, like you need to speak about your business. You need to go to tech conferences, try to apply for accelerator or incubator programs. They are not a guarantee for you to raise funds, but then they will expose you and give you a lot of information as to how to raise funds and so on and so forth. And then truly you can actually raise funds if your business idea is unique enough, right? Or is interesting enough to any investors that are on the same platform that you are. However, it is good to develop what I'll call strategic partnerships. Develop strategic partnerships with a lot of people. Why? Is that it will help you as a founder save costs. So just the same way, the example that AY listed out, maybe I'm a startup founder, and then part of my business has to do with logistics. It makes no sense to go and develop a full logistics rail. You can just partner with the common names like GIG or DHL and so on and so forth at a startup cost. One perfect example is for tech founders who maybe, or any founder really that is just going to be on an online platform, right? You can get discounted rates from Google to host your Google Cloud storage. They give free credits for startups. So these are things that you can apply for. You say, oh, I need to save cost here and there. So let's just apply for this. And then form strategic partnerships here and there. It will move your business a long way. Lastly, is to find a unique selling point, because most people are just trying to do a lot of the same out there, or sometimes they even just build products for which people don't need a solution to. I mean, there's no problem here, but they are on and on building a product to serve a solution to someone who doesn't really need it. But you need to check and do some research, or do some get some feedback from a focus group and say, oh, see, this thing that I'm doing, is this a serious problem that you guys have, so that we can fix it? Or look for a unique selling point for your product. So if everybody is, let's say, selling their products on a particular platform, you can bring it to them directly. Whatever your unique selling point is, develop your unique selling point so that instantly you can start generating traction, as opposed to struggling in the space where other people have already occupied. So I'll just rest at this moment, and then that's my contribution.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
I think
There's something that you touched on. Sorry, just a quick one, Dami. I like something that he touched on in terms of going out there, having conversations, strategic partnerships, mentorships. I see that happening a lot with me and in our field, in our industry. A lot of people who are building. One of the new things that I'm starting to see, and I really like that people are doing that, is that they're using each other to practice pitches. So I've had some people come to me and say, I want to share my idea with you. I want you to critique what I'm building and what I'm saying and what I'm doing. What do you think about it? And we're all doing that for each other. We can't build behind a closed door. You just don't know if somebody wants it, or you don't know how somebody's going to accept and take what you're bringing to the market. So I like that you touched on. I think, Dami, you were going to say something. Was it Dami that was speaking?
Yeah, no, I just posted it on the chat. I think the only thing I wanted to add was like, just like be your own advocate, like preach your own story, write articles, highlight the problem and how your company is solving it, and just be consistent about it. I think the more people know that you're solving a problem, the more their mind always comes to you when they see that problem, and then they'll reach out to you. It's just the only thing I wanted to add. But yeah, great
Actually,
solution.
something to touch on that as well. There was some conversation I had with some founders. We had a meetup about 2-3 weeks ago, and somebody later asked that what are the top skills that you recommend for a founder, to have, top 5 skills. I'll ask each one of you shortly, but I'll say one of the things that I said was communication skills. I find that is so terribly necessary for anybody building a business. You must be able to explain yourself, express yourself, sell your business very clearly, very succinctly, very, so that they get the point in exactly a minute, and then the conversations. Because some of these VCs that you're going to be talking to, not some, all of them, they are time conscious, time precious. Nobody's going to hang around with you, for 15, 30 whole minutes waiting for you to flop around and sort of just wing it as you're going along to describe what you do. You must build up the confidence as you're going along in explaining your business and explaining the benefits very, very quickly, very sharply as you go along. But Dami, I was going to ask you a question before I go on to the skills that founders must have, right? Can you share with us maybe any situation that you've had where you were putting forward any company to meet with VCs, investors, and that sort of thing, or some conversations were already going and it fell through? And we've had situations where people have been ghosted by VCs, ghosted by angel investors. They thought that things were going to come through. They thought the money was going to come through, but at the end of the day, at the last minute, some of these deals didn't pan out. VCs walked away from the business, and after everybody had thought that this was really going to be a big deal. Have you been involved in any situations? What is that the founder would do? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
you kind of froze. Yeah, you kind of froze, but I think we got the gist of the
Yes.
the question.
Yes, please.
I think that unfortunately that does happen. I think that the reason why it happens sometimes is that with everything that is going on in, kind of the funding ecosystem now, many VC funds unfortunately don't have money. And because of that, obviously, like no VC fund is going to come out and tell you, we're not, we don't have money now, and we're not taking any calls, because when and I'm speaking of this because this was something that at EcoVC, we were in a place where we had invested through the money that we raised. We were actively raising, our second fund, but that one was, like fundraising takes sometimes 2 years, 3 years. TLCom, the first fund took about 5 years. And I think many people don't know that, but that's how long it takes for investors to raise money from LPs. I think that sometimes investors find themselves in a position where they've deployed their first fund. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Investors have deployed their first fund, and then they're in a place where they need to continue the conversations with founders, because the other thing that LPs are asking is who's in your pipeline. And if you're not speaking to founders, unfortunately, you don't have a pipeline to show investors that if you raised $50 million, you have companies that you're going to invest in. So what a lot of VCs do, VC funds, actually most VC funds do this. What they do is that they would be speaking to founders in the hope that once they close their funding round, they will start to make, in fact, some of them would have done the IC, some of them would have done the investment memo in the hope that once they close they close their fund, they will start to make those investments. But unfortunately, things with LPs, the situation with LPs also, it also drags. Sometimes LPs will tell you that we're going to fund, they're going to fund, and they also don't fund. So sometimes it's a trickle effect where the LPs sell the GPs that, and so LPs are limited partners who invest in venture capital funds. The GPs are the partners of the venture capital funds. And so the LPs tell them that, we're going to give you money at a certain time, but then that doesn't happen. Or sometimes what happened at EcoVC was that the person that you were speaking with in your lead, the person who was going to be the lead investor in your fund left. And so you had to wait until a time where they had to bring somebody else, and then you have to restart the conversation with that person. So a lot of those things, keep happening. And obviously, as a managing partner of a VC fund, that's not the kind of story you'll be telling every founder that, oh, we're in a situation where, we're trying to raise funds and then the person who we're raising from has left, and then we have to restart the conversation. So many things happen. Sometimes it's also that with syndicates, they don't raise enough money. So when they've spoken with you, they send the deal, the IM to the syndicate, and the syndicate doesn't generate enough interest for them to make an investment in the company. But I know that what generally some syndicates do is that they would have gotten a commitment, soft commitment of, we're going to do the due diligence, we're going to write the investment memo. If everything checks out, who's willing to invest? And that way there's a signal around the amount of money that they could potentially raise from the angel investment syndicate. So there are so many situations where this happens. Unfortunately, it impacts the startups because they also have expectations around, we're going to raise from this angel investor, we're going to raise from this VC fund. And if that doesn't happen, then it feels like all the things that you had planned, all the marketing strategy that you had, all the growth strategy that you had will be stalled until you raise more money. I think for me, I always advise people that as much as possible, build a product that people will pay for. That honestly is the best product that you can build. Build a recurring business that people have no choice but to use. If people are constantly using your product every day, if they don't have another option, or if they don't have a better alternative, let me use that word because sometimes there are other alternatives. If you don't have a better alternative, everybody will use your product. So build a product that you can consistently generate revenue from, because those are the best businesses that investors want to put money in.
Thank you, Dami. Thank you. So moving on to Ayoola and John, right? Is there any common mistakes that you have found with founders that you have worked with that caused the investments not to go through, or some of the do you have any horror stories? I wouldn't say, maybe not horror stories per se, but any mistakes made by founders that those who are just getting into the business now need to hear of such things and know what to avoid doing, so they don't fall into such a trap?
All right. So I think that one of the things that Dami might agree with me is the ask, right? The ask and the valuation, right? Sometimes they are far apart, right? Because, at the very early stage, you probably don't have money to do a valuation exercise, right? So if you don't have the right, financial experience, you probably just assume that, oh, I need all the money in the world. So your ask is bigger than even what the company is valued at, right? That's the first. The second part of it is that there's usually a misfit, right? If you are in fintech and you're speaking to an investor in clean energy or something, right? That investor has his interest and his heart somewhere else, right? And you are just hitting him up, right? So most times, you need to know that sometimes if you hit an investor up as a founder, you might, be having a misfit, and hence the deal may not go through. We've had situations where we've been on a deal and the founders are not well prepared for the pitch, right? You can't even in 5 seconds even get the attention of the investor, right? Sometimes it's having to wordy a pitch deck, right? Because you want to say everything and anything. You want to be sure to show the investors how your head is thinking about the entire process, while the investor is just looking for salient details, right? So it's knowing what the investor is looking out for. And I remember one day I was on LinkedIn and I saw a chart. It had this separate pattern of how the pitch deck to look like, the 500 startup, how the pitch deck should look like. If you're a founder and you're trying to do it by yourself, you're going to be confused because everybody has a must-have, and if you have this, it looks good, and before you realize it, you have like 30-something slide pitch deck, right? And the investor doesn't have that time. He has, even the VCs, Dami would also agree with me if she was while she was at Echo VC, you probably have over 50 pitch deck to look at in a day. So there's no time to, and that's why some platforms, some foreign platform will advise that you do like a demo day, right? Where you come as a founder and you come and pitch your idea, to the investor. But before you go through the entire process, what we try to do at Umbrella is that we have preliminary calls with the founders, right? Where we come on the calls and we look through your pitch deck. We have the advisory who also advise through, and they're professionals in different aspects of the entire startup journey. And then the goal for us is that you should be able to close, at least get a yes or a no, right? Because you've been through the entire process, right? It's the yes or no that founders are always waiting for that takes months to get. At least if you have a yes, yes, well, interested in investing in this, then the conversation will be that you guys go into a term sheet and a deal conversation, and then you close up the deal, right? Sometimes with platforms like ours as well, what we try to do is to have different inflows, right? Sometimes the VCs have a particular set of people they work with. We have VCs that are coming to us as deal pipelines, right? So we're like a pipeline to supply deals to them. So while, we also have investment partners on Umbrella, we have people who have, the network as well. That's how we are also reaching out to our own networks. We have partners who would also reach out to their network. So at some point in time, you should be able to close the deal, right? Not as lengthy as this. The other problem that we have is timing. Again, you need to know if it's the right time to reach an investor, right? You might not know, but at least whoever is sitting on the deal should know when is the right time to hit an investor. If there's a problem, there's a national security problem, sometimes you have, and sometimes some investors also know what they want. They want everything, asking you questions. And the guy just gets to a stage and the guy is looking at it all over again and saying, man, I saw something better than, this guy's deal. And then they just decide to go with the other one because they see a lot of deal. You have one VC is not the only one speaking to that guy. He's probably speaking to, he has probably a lot of people who are also speaking to him, right? And he has partners that he's committed to, So I think that the solution to that would be that as founders, don't always ask for feedback, right? Even when an investor says, no, I'm not going ahead with this deal, ask for the feedback. Why aren't you going ahead with this deal? It could be just one thing and then you could fix that thing and another investor would be willing to invest in you. But sometimes we get no and we just turn our back at the door and shut the door, right? So our advice would always be that we ask that, okay, so what's your reason for not going with this guy? So that he has something to work with when he's speaking to somebody else and he can move on with it. John.
All right. Thanks for the value points that you laid out, but then I was just going to touch on a few things. It's important for every founder to get one critical part off the ground. There's no investor in the world, none, that will just give you money simply because you need it, or simply because, please give me money, and then they need to see that you have rolled up your sleeves, you have gotten into your business, you have started working on something. It is important to establish proof of concept. If you have been running a business, just like Dami said at the beginning of this talk, if you have been running a business, depending on how long you have been running a business, your traction is supposed to speak to that effect. That's first. Secondly, if you have been running a business for a particular period of time and nobody has committed funds to it, that nobody has found the solution or the product that you're building valuable enough to bring out money from their pockets and pay, then you need to have a rethink. So most of the time, and AY was talking about timing just now. It is very important to know that somehow you have no business talking to an investor if you cannot show traction yet. What are we investing in really, right? Then when you have proof of concept, you can go and say, 1, 2, 3, 10, 100 people consider what I'm building or the service that I'm providing valuable enough to bring out my hard-earned money and pay for it. Now that's the first step. The second step is you have to be able to, or the second mistake that people make is that they get in front of an investor, they say, I need $2 million because maybe it sounds good or it will give them a very good runway to run their business. But then as AY also mentioned, it is very important to know how the funds that you're requesting for relates to your valuation, and then what you're willing to give in return for the funds that you're seeking. So most people just come and say, oh, I need $10 million for 1% of my company. You're trying to tell us that your company is worth maybe $1 billion, which is very fallacious. So you need to know how this relates to the investor. Thirdly, one of the common mistakes that many people make is how they speak to their use of funds. You ask for maybe $2 million and then you say, oh, I need $2 million to push my business to the next stage. We're going to use, let's say 40% to service maybe partners or this and that. And then at the end of the day, when you quantify what this founder is using the funds for, maybe 60% of it he's just giving other people, or they're just using it for staff salaries, or using it to enjoy their lives basically. And it's not be the first time that an investor will misappropriate funds or use it for personal gain. So, a founder will use an investor's funds for personal gains or misappropriate it. So investors are very careful how they dole out funds. It is not just to show that, oh, my business is structured properly and so on and so forth. It is also to the investor how this founder is going to use the funds in the proper manner. They are looking at your lifestyle. If you're looking for funds and you're saying, oh, I need $200,000, and then you're always on a trip to Dubai, skydiving or bungee jumping, it almost feels like, oh, you're not interested in your business enough to commit some of these funds to your business. You're out there just maybe doing some other stuff that are not relevant to what you say you're building. So these are some of the mistakes. Sometimes it's not what you're saying on the call, it's how you're perceived, what your lifestyle is like, what you plan to use the funds for. And then it's very critical, as Dami mentioned, you need to be an advocate of your business. But then just more than being an advocate of your business, you need to be extremely confident about it. Most investors want to see that confidence, the passion, the unwavering belief that this person will push this team all the way, regardless of whether we fund him today or not. There are some people that were spoken to at Umbrella, and then we know that if we're not able to raise funds for this person in the next 2 months, most likely we won't get the opportunity to raise funds for them anymore, because this person is on the rise. He's on a trajectory where anybody will fund him at this point. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So you need to get to that point where you look to the investor as though you're about to take off. You've already done a few things, and then they just need to support you with a little bit of funds, and then you move. Lastly, this is what I was going to touch on. Most people neglect the part of legal due diligence. You go to speak with an investor, and then maybe your companies are not registered in the proper manner. The structure that you have for your companies are not good. You have some agreements that are detrimental to your business. You have signed some partnerships that gives away almost all of the revenue that you're going to be making. So it is very important to undergo legal due diligence. Talk with a legal practitioner. Hey, some of the deals that I'm signing off on, before I go and meet an investor, do they make sense? Am I going to talk to this investor, and when he looks through, he's going to find out that, oh, most of the funds that he's going to be funding me with, I'm going to be piecing it away due to lack of proper diligence legally. So these are some of the mistakes that founders make that I feel should be corrected before they go speak to an investor. So I'll just rest at this moment. Thanks.
Thank you for that, John. Thank you. To touch on something that you said, just to highlight, when you're speaking to a legal representative, it has to be somebody who is conversant with that field or conversant with partnerships. We can't be talking about legal documents for founders and tech. They were talking to maybe a legal advisor from real estate. It has to be somebody who really understands the field of what we're building. And then just to also touch on something that you said and link it to what Dami said earlier on when she used Jason Njoku as an example. One of the things that we need to be careful about is also our own, to remember that investors are not just, can everybody hear me, by the way? Yeah. That investors are not just investing in the business that we put in the pitch deck. They're investing in us. They're looking at you yourself personally, right? So, because earlier on when Dami was talking, she mentioned about, people who have had track record of raising funds before and that sort of thing. But, for the rest of us who maybe this is our first venture into business, is this one tech app or tech, or solution that we've built. Something that is key to me, that my mentors always harp on, is that I should not discount the fact that I've already had a lot of traction in my previous places of work, in the previous businesses that I've built. I've built all this other businesses successfully before venturing into tech. So that actually counts as something, for us to come and approach investors and VCs. They should also be able to see that we've been successful in other areas of our lives, and just to show that consistency, to show that, where we put our hands to something, we really did. Some people have started asking questions in the chat box. So I'm going to let the question and answer start flying now, especially as Dami has to go. So anybody who has any question that is specifically targeting, specifically addressing Dami, can please raise up their hand and speak up. We promise that it will be a short and sharp session. I can see that people are firing questions. Maybe some people don't want to speak publicly. Should I read all of the questions in here? Anybody want to speak? Anybody have a question?
I think I answered some of the questions because I wasn't sure about the timing, but I answered some of the questions on the chat already. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions.
Okay, Charles Matthews asks, founders need traction to access investor funding as much as they need funding to get reasonable traction. True. Kindly share insights, Dami, on how to get to $1 million ARR without any external funding. You've already answered that, but if you can just share with us.
Yeah, so I think what I was saying is that a lot of that has to do with the business model that you have. I think that a lot of if your business is a B2B business, then you have a greater chance of having, a business or building a business with $1 million ARR, because that means that an ARR is annual recurring revenue. That means that you have subscribers and users on your platform that are consistently paying to use your product on a monthly or quarterly or yearly basis. But that in most cases is most synonymous with B2B business, where you're selling to another business, and because your product is very sticky. So for example, if you were selling an accounting software, or if you were selling a logistics platform, you subscribe to use the platform, and the amount of money that you pay. So for example, there's a fee that you pay for using the platform and monitoring your, and monitoring the amount of trips that is done. But there's also a fee that you pay, maybe on a per transaction basis, where you charge the users for every delivery that is done with the bikes that you have, so there are different things that you can do, and there are different ways that you can get to that point where you have a business that is 1 million ARR. Kalendi did it, before they raised any money. They initially had raised a seed round. I think it was about maybe 200 or 500K, but until they got to about $1 million in ARR, they did not raise any money, and they were constantly again, it was a long journey. It took some time, but I think the founder was very intentional about not taking extra capital until he had reached a certain point in the business. And at the point when he was like, okay, we're ready to build, to raise more money, the investors came calling. Like, every investor wanted to get on his cap table, because they knew that he had already shown that it was possible to build that kind of business without getting external funding. And that's how investors want to feel. Investors want to feel like, and this was something I think John mentioned, that want to feel like, if we don't give you money, we're the ones that will suffer. Like, it's to our detriment that we do not give you money. And so we want to support you. We want to get into your business. And they're the ones that are going to have to prove why, or how they're going to help you become a better company. So I think a lot of it, again, aligns with the business model that you have, the type of users that you have, and then the market opportunity. You also need to make sure that the type of users that you have are the type of users that will pay and have the money to pay and would not flinch to pay that money on a monthly or annual basis.
All right.
Thanks, Dami.
Let me
I think Charles still has a follow-up. I think it was Charles, because it was Charles that asked the question. Maybe he wants to clarify or add something. Ayoola, can we take Charles before you?
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Dami. So this is what I have to say. Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm a 3-time founder, and I've raised funds in the past. So you want to build something and succeed. You need money to do that. Because basically, there's nothing new about what you want to build.
Mm-hmm.
There is someone who is doing what you are doing, or there is a very close alternative that is very useful, even though it is not cost efficient, even though you are the one who is seeing the problem, and you are the one who is seeing what can be gained in that market. So you go into that market, let's say you go into the market with $20,000 and you start building, and you run out of money, and you need money to keep building, and you can't get money because your traction is not at maybe 50,000 MRR or ARR whatsoever. So I'm asking that, although I heard everything you said, but from a Nigeria perspective, don't talk about Calendly. Founders have their peculiar problems that they face in Nigeria. So talk about the Nigerian perspective. What do you think is the best way for a founder that has some money, small money that he wants to use to build, taking cognizance that that money will not get your product to be sexy enough to get some audience, but it will still get you some audience? What can you do to continue to build without seeking external funding, or in a period where external funding is actually very scarce? What can you do?
Yeah, so I
you.
wouldn't say anything different from what I've said. I think that everything that I said before still stands. It still depends on your revenue model, still depends on your business model, still depends on the market opportunity, still depends on if you cannot convince people to pay for your product, you either have to change the product, you either have to rethink, is this the best product? Am I serving the right people? Can they afford to pay for it? Is my business, is the product that I'm selling, is it an actual recurring, is it a daily product for people to use? So take, for example, I'm not going to mention the name, but we invested in so my angel syndicate, we invested in a company that previous founder, excellent founder, great executor. He started another business, and we, a lot of people invested money in him because everybody knows him, and everybody thinks that he was going to execute. But last year, he and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about how the business that he had built, new business that he had built, was struggling because a lot of people that use the product don't do it on a daily basis. They use it maybe on a monthly basis, but they're not even willing to pay because it's not something that they wake up every morning and everybody's checking, or you're consciously using. If you're not building that kind of product, there's no way that you're going to get to 1 million MRR. And so you ended up being that they ended up, even though a lot of people had invested, they ended up shutting down the company because they just couldn't find a model that worked for the target users that they had. And I think that every founder needs to get to a point where if you've consistently done something for a long time, you need to rethink your strategy. If your strategy is not working, you need to rethink your business model. You need to rethink your market opportunity. You need to rethink the target users that you have, because that means that maybe you're not selling to the right people. Maybe the people that you're targeting just cannot afford to pay. If you cannot convince a user to use your product and consistently come back to you, you don't have a product. So again, Calendly is a great option. Founder is Nigerian, but there's so many other companies that are bootstrapped up to a point where they're like, okay, we need to raise funding, but again, if you're not able to get it into an accelerator, if you're not able to convince your family and friends to give you money, if you're not able to get angel investment, if you're not able to convince your users to pay, you need to rethink your strategy.
Thank you, Dami. I think John wanted to chip in here. Was it John or Ayoola that had something to say on this issue?
It was me. I was just going to come from like the marketing perspective, right? If you're a founder and you're still heavily focused on acquisition rather than retention, then you might be facing that problem. Because what you want is that you want repeated customers to pay you, right? So one of the best approach to it will be that you have a strategy for retention, right? And then come up with a couple of loyalty, schemes that would also help get more people, loyal customers into your system. That way you can get more paying clients, as opposed to acquisition, right? I know that at the early stage of fundraising, a lot of us were focused on the numbers. We thought that investors were really interested in the numbers. Now that investors are interested in your recurring revenue, right? The best approach to it is to have customers who are retained within your system, who are willing to constantly, put in the funds into the system. And then with time, again, I think that you also need to be patient at some point in time, right? Grow with your customers, try and go into some personalization. And then this would also help increase the quality of the service that you give. Once your quality of the service is good, then the customers begin to tell the story of the brand, itself. And then that gets people customers, right?
Exactly, because I also come from a marketing background, from a heavy advertising campaign and marketing background, where the advice I would give is this is the time to growth hack. This is the time to put several growth marketing, growth hacking experts in a room and say, guys, how do we quadruple our customer base in 3 months without spending money? This is the time to pull out ideas. You need a hat trick in your business at some point where investment stalls, where acquisition has stalled, and there's seemingly no new avenues to bring in investors into the business. Then it's really the time to say, to speak to the team and say, what new gimmicks or what innovative ways can we approach the marketplace to drive exponential growth? From a very, very innovative idea that you hadn't thought about before. It's just a time to think differently. So I agree very well with Dami that, there's many different things to look at. If you can't get money from family and, all the other avenues, then maybe it's time to change the business model, but not before looking into some very serious, innovative ways to growth hack your business. Okay, so aside from Charles, let me ask if there's more questions. I know there were questions before where people were asking how to get in touch with Dami and how to get in touch with the Umbrella team. Yes, you guys have shared your emails, Ayoola@useumbrella.com and John@useumbrella.com. We want to hear from Temitope. Temi, you have been chatting in the, and also John, I think John has something to say, but we specifically want to hear from Temitope. He has a lot to say in the chat room. So just right after John, we're gonna unmute you, Temitope, to share something with us. John, go ahead, please.
Okay, great. I'll make it quick. I just wanted to touch on what Charles was saying before we move on to Temitope. So the way I heard your question asked, I'm just going to repeat it, and please confirm to me that I'm getting it right. You were saying if you get into the markets with say $20,000 and then you are building, and then you have not built to the point where you can make maybe you have not built to an MVP. And at that point, you now start going to look to raise funds. How can you go about it? Please confirm to me that this is your question.
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
This is what I meant. Look at Uber, for instance.
Mm.
Before Uber launched in 2009, I guess, we had taxi companies and they were doing fine. Mm-hmm. And you feel that, okay, there's a better way to do this thing. Mm-hmm. And you have started, you are in San Francisco, mm-hmm. and you don't have money to do beyond San Francisco. You are trying to raise money and nobody wants to give you money. So you decide that, okay, let me just continue to make this more money. So I'm speaking from my own case. Like I said, I'm a 3-time founder. I've raised funds in the past. I've raised 6 figures in the past. And the new startup that I'm working on, I have over 12,000 users. I've made money, but you want to get to more people. You cannot get to more people because there's a way you need to work on that product, because in the adoption phase, you have different product adopters. So when you start, you get early adopters. People who adopt your product at a very early stage. There are some people that will need that product at very early stage, but will not adopt it because they are laggers. They are waiting for others to confirm that, oh, this product is good. And I'm saying that if you do not have some good money, your product will not be attractive to some people. So that is my point. So I'm speaking from a point of traction. You have this traction. Whatever is called traction, you have it. But you cannot get money. And you have decided to just continue to build your business without seeking any money, without getting into any accelerator, without talking to any investor. Even when you have gotten commitment from an investor that says, I'm going to give you this amount, but you are looking at the ecosystem, you are looking at the climate, things are not working for anybody.
Okay, so there's a very simple answer here to your question, and this is where I think we touched on, but then is an operational issue, because first, you are making money already, so you have traction. All you need to leverage on is strategic partnerships. I'll give you examples with the same example that you highlighted. Uber is in San Francisco. They want to expand to the rest of the world. They don't have money. All they need to do is to do strategic partnerships with people who have already set up in this part of the world that they want to expand to. I'll give you another example with Quick Logistics. Quick Logistics is in Nigeria. They are based out of Lagos. Their founders are Indian, I think. When they came to Nigeria, maybe they started with like 200 bikes, but then 200 bikes cannot service the whole of Lagos. What they started doing was that from the revenue that they made with 200 bikes, they started acquiring up other bike services. At some point, acquisition was not the way forward, so they started partnering. So when they partner with other bike services, it formed a huge collection of bike riders that moved their traction upwards. Even though they were doing revenue share, they created a deal that cost them less to acquire, but then they were making more money now. They had more reach, and then they expanded a lot faster. So basically, you don't have to do everything yourself. That's what we're trying to say. As a startup, in fact, you shouldn't do anything, or let me not say you shouldn't do anything yourself. You shouldn't do most things that are cost effective yourself, especially if there are partners who can help you with this. And basically, a partnership deal says that, oh, see, bro, I'm going to bring you this amount of business. You should fulfill on your own end. When the customer pays, we're going to share revenue. They already have an infrastructure that works. You have one that works, that is acquiring customers. Like you said, you have 12,000 customers, but you can't serve all of them. Look for partners who can serve these people and do a revenue share. That way your revenue turns over, it becomes bigger, the partner is making money, everybody is getting served, and they're happy. So this is the simple solution, or the simplest solution that I can think of, especially when you can't raise funds. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for those.
Thank you very much. That went a long way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we want to hear from, before we close, because we have 10 more minutes on this call. We wanted to make it a very short session as part of our part one for the positioning your business for funding. It's just an hour and a half. I know Dami probably has to leave soon, but we've had Temitope lurking in the chat box. Do you want to share anything with us, or you want to comment on anything? And also, if anybody has any further questions. Before Temitope comes on, everybody has shared their email address in the chat box, so you can get in touch with John, Ayoola, and Dami, and you can also get in touch with the Tech Leaders Network. The next session will be held by the other co-conveners, and not myself. Temitope, are we there?
Hi guys, good evening. Thank you, Dami, for dragging me out. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I think I've listened quite extensively with a lot of the a lot of the speakers, and thank you, tech leaders, for bringing everyone. Thank you, John, Dami, and Ayoola, for doing good justice. So just to point out a lot of things that I need people to understand. Like you said, every business, no matter how experienced you are, you always treat it like tabula rasa, fresh, because every business gives you new perspective, and you can apply, oh yeah, you can apply some basic things, but most of the non-basic things you've done, it's a new market. To get essentially investor ready is to see things from an investor point of view. What I did basically was to actually apply to become an angel investor. And I took a class, I think this was Angel Africa Academy. There's AAA, it's done by the African Business Angel Network. And they went through what investors look out. I mean, it's different myriad reasons why maybe an investor won't invest in you. But the most true thing is that for an angel investor who uses his own money, in this case, imagine you work for your money, like all of us in this room, and you're to invest in someone. You'll be very picky because for you, your hard-earned money should not go to waste. Secondly, you will be 10 times more selective in your due diligence. So especially right now that there is a downturn in the venture capital space, they are looking out for revenue. Any other thing is stories. I will not just lie to you. If you're not making money, you're literally not going to make the cut. Because according to the point of view is, we would rather give the money to people who in their mind are ready as against that. That's not to say you're not doing something important. It's just the fact that if there are 10 people in front of me, one person has his shoes tied on, the other person is wearing his socks, and the other person is still looking for a shoe. Who will you give the money to? The person whose shoe is tied on. And that's just in the same thinking. If you need to raise, you have to have been showing that you're making money. But let's say your kind of business model cannot immediately show upfront money. The fact is, in the same sense of the traction levels, if you have a partnership you've signed with someone, have an SLA immediately. Let that SLA reflect on your data room. And that comes to another thing on keeping a data room. A data room here is a Google Drive, a OneDrive, a Dropbox that you select, is to select things from from your legal incorporation documentation down to your partnership and financials. I think from my rule of thumb and my experience, name all these things from A to Z. This is my legal doc, this is my financials, this is my partnership, this is my team, my HR, my payroll, everything that you do. Because that's what they see to be sure that you're a real business. They don't know you, for example. Most investors don't know you. And the truth about it is that the earliest stage is about you, they're investing. So just think about it. If I meet you for the first time, I don't know you. What will make me know you better? What will make me comfortable enough to know you better? It is those documentations that you provide to be showing that you are a real business. That's not to say they doubt you, but that is your data. That is your proof to show that you are a real business. You are making this money. You have these people. These are the kind of partnership contracts you sign. Is a purchase order available? Everything you do needs to be well, neatly arranged and interpreted. Then the second thing is about the market. Because they get a lot of different things, you really need to understand your market from a bottom up and a top down approach. A bottom up approach is simple. If you are looking at a market, let's say logistics, how many logistic companies exist in today? The simplest way to do it and the longest way to do it is to go on LinkedIn, type logistics in Nigeria. You see thousands of people in managing partners. If you say, okay, there are 1,000 of them, what's the average revenue from for logistics, like in terms of this thing? To get that data, you go to the public market, find what ABC Transportation is doing, right, in terms of revenue. That is a public company with a revenue figure. Work that backwards, right? If let's say ABC is doing 1.2 billion annually in terms of their turnover, and they are doing transportation, and your business is to disrupt their market. If they are doing that as the so-called market leaders by being public, right? If you work that backwards, you need to know that, okay, they serve currently 20,000 people. It means that for you to actually be their market leader by maybe 2x, 3x, you need to serve 50,000 people and get to this number. So you can literally use that figure to work back to what your revenue figures will likely be from when they start out. And again, it's also to be very, very conservative. I've seen financial projections where people are telling you in year one, I'm going to make 1 million naira. I'm going to tell you, there is no single business that started today that is going to be ever profitable the day they started. No single one. Don't just lie to yourself, right? Because there's so many things in starting up a business. You will not be profitable in your year one or even your year two. So investors are looking at that. They really want to know how you are thinking of numbers. If you are projecting forward stating positive statement from year one and year two, and your model and your business model is not showing you, that's already telling this person doesn't know what he's doing. If you're clearly stating the conservative numbers and you're putting the sample size and you're using, there's a concept of sum, TAM, and sum is the total addressable market, right? Sum is the serviceable obtainable market. Now,
yeah.
Yes, it is critical because you can't own the 100% market share at the start. Of course, your goal is to own the 100% market share. But you need to start out from a case of your worst case scenario. In my own thinking and how I plan, I use my worst case scenario figures, right? As my benchmark, I use the worst case scenarios that I can think of. Because when I beat that worst case scenarios, I am good. If I want to be profitable, I need to use the worst case scenarios I'm going to be as a benchmark, and then always strive to be at least 20% above that worst case scenario. And for one thing I always say is always project. And when I say project realistically, is there are a lot of these things that help you think well. Like projecting realistically means, what am I going to fetch in the market today? And times that by the numbers that your team could really, really get done. It might look small. We've seen of cases whereby some people started out, even Paystack, they started out at just 20 users, right? Today, they are not. I think one of the major things is also a investor pitching type dynamics, depending on the investor you are pitching to. There are some investors, by the people you are pitching to, you do something called a disqualification. Basically, if you have a list of investors to maybe pitch to, disqualify the kind of investors you want to work with and check out who they invest in, right? Which is meaning going on TechCrunch, TechCrunch, BAO, and many of all these business news and see what they've invested in prior, right? Many years ago. Are those companies still alive? Because if they, for example, invested in, say, a logistic company 7 years ago, and that business crashed, they won't be really keen on investing in you again, right? So already you are like tracking all their investment portfolios, where they are even at right now. Are they like, and basically, have they seen exits before? Because if an investor hasn't seen exits, the truth is they're looking for exits. And so they are not so forthcoming in even investing in you. So there's a lot of internal quiet data your research should do, right? Such that by the time you are preparing to pitch an investor, it is the right fit type of investor. You won't go to be investing in an agro fund while you are a health care. They only know, and there's also one important thing about the people who back you. The type of people who back you determines how you scale. Because if you take checks from an agro person and you're in healthcare, and that agro guy only knows agro, there's only that he can help you, because that's what his LPs and that's the backers who back him know. That's why most times fintechs raise from fintech or former fintech founders and fintech focused type of funds, because those people and the LPs are people who have scaled fintechs and scaled them, and they know exactly how to help you whenever you reach those challenges. So it's very important to match your investor type to your type of business, but also check those investors.
Yeah. So in other words, like they say, not all money is good money. right? Because if somebody throws money at you and at the end of the day, he cannot even help you with his network, with his business acumen, you know, with strategic thinking, then, you know, at the end of the day, it's just numbers. It's just money that you are liable for, but, you know, there's no real additional benefit that's coming from that investor. But I think for most founders, what I'm hearing is at the end of the day, they would need to engage companies like Umbrella, like Diligence Africa. Don't try to do it on your own. It's a case of you need a company to package you for investor readiness. That's the truth. Because I mean, I'm a founder and I've run businesses that are not tech, and now I have businesses that are in tech. And to be honest, a lot of it is overwhelming. It's still quite overwhelming for, you know, for a lot of people. So I think the takeaway that I'm seeing here is that people need professional advice, and from the professionals that we've gathered here, and which is why we want to be able to put together more sessions like this. Temitope, as a matter of fact, you are one of those that we had planned for part 2. My team will be in touch, touch with you. So as you are sharing your details, you're just sharing away. You are coming back, okay?
No problem. I think one more thing I wanted to just add, so before I jump off, is, hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
I think our network closed. So I think one more thing I wanted to add again is, I think one of the person who asked around how to, I mean, at this point in time, okay, what is the alternatives? Yes, there is venture debt. There's also some form of debt. Again, debt looks scary out front, I agree. But I think it's also based off on your model. So what I always say is try and do a rough model. You might not be so good in Excel, but you can as well use maybe a pen and paper. And the run of the mill is understand what the unit economics is. For me, when I calculate like a customer acquisition cost, like what it is to take a customer, the salaries I pay maybe my sales team, the internet we spend, everything combined, right? And the projected revenue gives me a baseline cost of CAC, or cost of acquisition. And with that in mind, I am thinking I need maybe 200 of these people to be profitable. 200 of this thing, 200 of this company to be profitable. How am I going to get this 200 of them? Is it through partnerships like one of Ayo has said? Is it through distribution by embedding in a larger business? Is it through actually going to find or pure B2B, or is it going from a B2C point, or is it even from government that I'm going to get that money? I'm going to basically have to fund that thinking. And then if I'm going to collect debt, I'm looking at an interest rate, meaning the margin I'm charging has to be what plus the interest I am going to be having to pay. So if I'm going to be having to pay 10% interest, my margin should be somewhere around the 70%, right? Gross, so that after taking out the interest is somewhere around the 50, 60 net. So I would always encourage you that anything you are thinking of, do a model around it using a worst and best case scenario. And based on the worst case scenario, benchmark that so that whatever you are planning, you already plan for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario in terms of we don't have money, we will have to lay off people, or zero, like you use the worst case scenario you think can be possible, right? And with that in mind, you see if your business is something that will be okay, right, for anybody to see. And that tells you if you actually have a business or not. And when you know that unit economics, it's easy for you to now see how your pathway to $1 million ARR, right? Because based on that unit economics, you know how long it might take realistically. You know how long or what effort you need. And I believe in that running out of runway or running out of money is actually the best test or the best ways to put you through thinking quick. I have been there. I've run out of money many times, but I've scaled my businesses, I've grown them. When your back is pushed across to the wall, you basically have one way forward is let us make money. That's the entire focus of your team. And you will be like, you and your team will have to sit down and try and execute an experiment. You will fail, you will try, you will not. I'm not saying it's all rosy. I'm not also saying it's going to be easy, but this is something that I have noticed is that you look at what the trend is, you look at where the value is, and you also look at the macroeconomic factors, right? For today, 70% of any customer you're trying to target, money is going to food, right? Out of the 70% of customers that the money is going to food, you only have, give or take, 5 million people who are digitally savvy online, right? Based on some different factors you see. So when you put that math in your head, if you have like 5 million people you can only target at all in any particular given time in this market, does the Nigerian market look sustainable to you, right? Based on your model? Or will you start thinking of how do I embed my solution outside the country to also defend my model? And then there's also now looking at your product lines and introducing service lines.
Sorry,
right? So
sorry,
those are the kind of things that will help you. All right. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I'm going to have to cut you short because I don't want the time to run over because it's a Friday evening. But I promise everyone that this is just part 1. We are coming back for part 2 and 3. And I really hope that by then everybody would have been able to share with their network and tell them what Tech Leaders Network is doing. We've put our email address in the chat board, and everybody received an email before starting this session. So if you want to hear more from us, if you have ideas and suggestions of how we can better serve the tech community, please send us emails, please ask us questions, just throw in your suggestions and let us know. And if there's anybody that spoke here out of Ayoola, John, Dami, Temi Tokwe, that anybody wants to get in touch with, you can always also ask us for any advice or for any contacts that you need. If there's no other questions or feedback, I can now feel free to thank our hosts. Our guest of today, John ADebayo of Umbrella. Thank you so much for the time. Ayoola from Umbrella, and our impromptu host who will be back again, Temi Tokwe Kundayo, and of course, Dami Diligence Africa, who had to sign off early. Thank you so much, everybody, and hope to see you on our social media, on Twitter, and hope to see you in our email inbox, and hope to see you at part 2 and part 3 and all the other webinars that we're going to be planning from here. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Thanks
a lot. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a lovely
Bye.
day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.